everyone and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video I'm going to be doing a tag that I've kind of half created, but also not really, because it's based on two other tag videos that I've seen on BookTube called Get to Know the Romance Reader and Get to Know the Fantasy Reader. I've basically taken the questions from those tags and adapted them to make this new tag called Get to Know the Thriller Reader. I haven't seen anyone do this before, but I do love thrillers and I feel like it's probably my most read genre, weirdly. But I feel like I haven't spoke about thrillers much on my channel apart from in wrap-ups, and I do want to change that. So I'm hoping with this tag that you'll get to know my taste in thrillers a little bit better and also get a few recommendations and just a general overview of the kind of thrillers that I like. Obviously I don't want to take credit for these questions because I didn't create them, but I will leave the original creators linked down below. The original romance reader tag was created by Bree from Falling for Romance, and then the fantasy reader tag was adapted from that romance reader tag by Maddie from the Book Pusher. So yeah, they will be linked down below in case you wanted to find out more. So question number one is, what is your thriller origin story? i.e. how did you come to read your first thriller? When I was a teenager I went through this phase where I was really into Stephen King books, but I feel like most of his books are more horror than thriller. And then in 2014, I think it was when I was in my early 20s, the film Gone Girl came out, and I really wanted to see the film, but I wanted to read the book first because we all know that the book is usually better. So I did, I read it and I absolutely loved it. Like, it just completely blew me away. I don't want to go into spoilers just in case anyone hasn't seen the film or read the book, but there's this moment around the halfway point where things take a turn, and oh my goodness, I can remember reading that and thinking, wow, because I had never read a book like that before. I really didn't see it coming, and from there I read all of Gillian Flynn's other books that were out at the time, and also The Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins, which was being marketed as the next Gone Girl, and I did enjoy that. I don't know whether I would enjoy them as much now, reading them having read a lot more thrillers, but I can definitely say that those two books in particular are what really got me into reading thrillers. Next question is, what are your favourite thriller tropes? Something that I realised last year that I'd never realised before was that I absolutely love the haunted house trope. You know, where something's going on and you're not sure whether it's paranormal or whether there's a more simpler explanation. Absolutely love that. And two of my favourite thrillers that I read last year were The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware and Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. Absolutely loved both of those, and they both have the haunted house trope, and I think that is why I loved them so much. The next question is, what is a thriller you've read in the past year that you would recommend? For this I'm going to go for The One by John Mars, which is a sci-fi, science fiction-y thriller that's set about 10 years in the future, where this company have come up with a way to test people's DNA to find soulmates. So you send off a mouth swab of your DNA, and if your soulmate has also sent off a sample of their DNA and they're in this database, then this company will put you in touch with each other for a fee, obviously. And the book follows 5 different people who have just received an email to say that their match has been found. If you like the TV show Black Mirror, then I'd really recommend this because it's very dark and it's so interesting the way that it explores the impact that this discovery has had on humanity and how it's completely changed the way that people view relationships. Because, for example, there's some people who have chosen not to send off their DNA, and there's also people that were in existing relationships beforehand that have since found that they're not a match. Even though it's quite a long book, the chapters are very short, and I'm not joking when I say that there is a cliffhanger at the end of every chapter, and so it was really difficult to put down. I think I finished it in less than a day. The only thing I will say is that it does have trigger warnings for graphic violence and murder, so just something to bear in mind if you are thinking of reading this, but otherwise I really recommend it. The next question is, what is your favourite thriller subgenre? This is a really difficult question to answer because I feel like I'm pretty open-minded when it comes to thrillers. The only subgenre that I don't tend to love are domestic thrillers, probably because I'm just not very domestic. I think if I was given the choice, I would probably choose a psychological thriller or a mystery thriller, something that's got lots of twists and turns that I can't see coming. I also really like crime thrillers that are following a detective or a team of detectives as they try and solve a case. Also, I really like courtroom thrillers, you know, where you're following a trial. I really like the TV show How to Get Away with Murder, and so anything that's like that but in book format, then yeah, I enjoy that too. Next question is, who are your auto-buy thriller authors? Top of the list is Riley Sager. I think I mentioned I read a few of their books last year. really loved them. Really good psychological horror thrillers. Cara Hunter, who writes the D.I. Adam Fawley series, which is a British crime thriller series set in Oxford. Steve Kavanagh, who writes the Eddie Flynn series. That's a courtroom thriller, which I read the latest book, 50/50, quite recently. I think it was last week. Absolutely loved it, gave it 5 stars. And then finally, C.L. Taylor, who also writes psychological thrillers. And I think Sleep is probably my favourite book of hers because the twists in that are just wow. The next question is, how do you typically find thriller recommendations? This is a pretty easy one to answer because I get pretty much all of my book recommendations through BookTube or Bookstagram, although I found that there isn't as many BookTubers that focus on thrillers in comparison to other genres. I don't know whether that's just me and that I'm just not looking in the right places. There's a few BookTubers that I know that do read thrillers as well as other genres, kind of like me actually, because I read thrillers as well as fantasy and romance and contemporary fiction, but I don't focus on thrillers as much as other genres. I don't know if I'm making sense. Basically, what I'm trying to say is BookTube and Bookstagram are where I get my recommendations from. The next question is, what is an upcoming thriller release that you're looking forward to? I actually did a whole video last month where I talked about some upcoming book releases that I was excited for, and I did a whole section on upcoming thriller releases, so I'll leave that link down below if you wanted to check it out. But I think the thriller that I'm most excited for is Survive the Night by Riley Sager. So this is about a college student who's sharing a lift home with another college student, and they're strangers. They've only just met through this university bulletin board, and so they're on this long drive back home, and she starts to suspect that he might be the serial killer that's been murdering people on campus. This sounds absolutely incredible, and if this is anything like Riley Sager's other books, Home Before Dark or Lock Every Door, then I know that I'm going to love it. The next question is, what is one misconception about thrillers that you'd like to address? I think that some people might avoid thrillers because of the content, and I do think that's fair because there are some thrillers that are quite gruesome and gory, and there are some thrillers that have triggering content, but not all thrillers are like that, and there are some that are more tame, I guess is the right word to describe them. The next question is, who are some content creators you follow who recommend thrillers? There's a few booktubers that spring to mind, like April from Getting Hugger With It, I hope I've said that right, Hayley from Hayley Hughes, and Jess from Books Past Bedtime. They all read a lot of thrillers, and I've got some really good recommendations from them in the past. I'll also leave links in the description to other booktubers that I follow that maybe read a mix of genres, but they do read thrillers, just in case you wanted to check those out. I also wanted to mention Nicole from A Beautiful Chaos of Books because she was one of the very first booktubers that I ever watched. She doesn't make YouTube videos anymore, but she does have an Instagram, so I'll leave that link down below because she does still post content over there. The final question is, if someone had never read a thriller before, what 3 books would you recommend? Okay, so obviously I've mentioned a few books in this video already, but there are a few other books that I would recommend if you've never read a thriller before, but for very different reasons. If you're looking for a good mystery, then I would probably recommend The Guest List by Lucy Foley, and I have talked about this book on my channel before because I didn't love this book. However, I think the reasons that I didn't love it are reasons why other people might enjoy it. It's basically about a wedding that takes place on this remote island, and the guest list is very exclusive because the bride and groom are kind of minor celebrities, and at the reception someone dies, they're murdered, but you don't know who the victim is or who the murderer is until much later in the book. I really liked the mystery of this story, and I really liked the atmosphere and the isolated setting. The only thing I didn't really like was the characters because they were very unlikable, but I think they were written that way, and I know that a lot of people have read this and given it 5 stars because that didn't bother them. And so I think that if you're looking for a good mystery that's kind of Agatha Christie style, then this is a book that I would recommend. The next book I'm going to recommend is Miracle Creek by Angie Kim. So if you enjoyed books like Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng, then I think you could really enjoy this because it's a very emotional courtroom mystery thriller. The story is set in this small town in America where a Korean immigrant family runs something called the Miracle Submarine. So this is a hyperbaric chamber, like a pressurized oxygen chamber that's used as an alternative treatment for a range of things like infertility and autism. But one day the chamber explodes and kills 2 people that were inside, and the book basically follows the court case that happens afterwards. It's quite a slow-paced read, but it's very compelling, and I really liked the perspective switches between all of the different characters that are involved in this court case, and throughout the book you're trying to work out what actually happened. The author actually worked as a lawyer, and she's also the mother of a child who went through H-bot therapy like in the book, and so I think you could really see that in the writing. Like, it was so well written, and it's one of my favourite books, but I don't see many people talking about it on BookTube. The final book I'm going to recommend is No Exit by Taylor Adams, and I'm going to recommend this if you're looking for a really fast-paced psychological thriller that's going to really get your heart pumping, because this book was wild. The story follows a college student who's driving home because her mum's in hospital, and there's this blizzard while she's driving through these mountains, and so she pulls over into a rest stop where there's a few people like milling around like in this building, but she can't get signal on her phone, so she goes out into the car park and she's walking around like with her phone trying to get signal, when she notices a child locked in a cage in the back of this van, and she starts to suspect that one of the people at this rest stop is a kidnapper. This book was so fast paced. I think I read it in like a day. There's so many twists and turns, and you do kind of have to suspend disbelief a little bit, because some of the stuff that happens, especially towards the end, is a little unrealistic, it's a little out there. But if that doesn't bother you and you're looking for a quick thriller read, then I would recommend it. Okay, so that brings me to the end of the video, so thanks for watching if you've made it this far. I don't want to tag anyone in particular because I'm awkward, but if you're a booktuber and you read thrillers and you're watching this and you would like to answer these questions, then obviously please feel free. Let me know if you do this tag, like drop me a message on Twitter or Instagram, or leave me a comment down below and I will check out your videos too. But yeah, as I was saying, thanks for watching if you've made it this far. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and click subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Bye.